Right. So I told you, remember that there is three types of pollution that we are looking at: groundwater pollution, marine pollution, and also surface water pollution. Okay. So we just looked at the different causes of water pollution for surface, groundwater, and marine. Now, if you remember, I told you about arsenic, right? Arsenic, which enters from the groundwater, and it also, especially in India, also it was recorded that there was arsenic contamination, uh, deposition of arsenic in our plants, right? So the regular vegetables that we eat found residues of a lot of arsenic, right? So let me just show you how arsenic enters into our food chain, right? And why it's a very dangerous thing. So let's quickly just study this.
South and Southeast Asia alone, more than 100. Arsenic is a chemical element that's often found naturally in minerals. If you drop a rock containing arsenic into a cup of pure water, odds are nothing will happen because most forms of the mineral are not soluble in water alone. However, if you add the right mix of microbial organisms and organic carbon to this cup, take out the oxygen, the mineral will break through and release arsenic into the water. Even though all this is happening naturally, human activities such as well irrigating and change the groundwater filter and introduce more organic carbon that will further facilitate the arsenic release process. If your water turns out to be contaminated, there are a few options to regain potable water in your household. The first option is to join a public water supply system. The second option is to install an arsenic filter for your well. The last option is to drill or switch to a new well that is more likely to produce arsenic-free milk. In less developed countries, the last option is often preferred, and in the absence of a public water supply system for effective water monitoring and treatment. Today, international science communities such as MIT have built many studies in arsenic effectiveness. The research effort has also motivated programs to find ways to help effective population rate.
Right. So arsenic in itself is not, if you put a piece of arsenic into water, it's not going to cause much of a reaction. But if there are pollutants in the water, if there is carbon dioxide, inorganic compounds of carbon in the water, then that is going to accelerate the effect of water pollution. Okay, so that is why arsenic contamination is very, very dangerous. And what happens when water gets polluted? So the first effect is eutrophication. So everyone must have seen a river like this, you know, where there is excessive growth of green algae, a green cover mat on the river. So this is because of something called as eutrophication. Um, Eutrophication is when this water body becomes enriched with minerals and nutrients. Okay, what happens is that the river water gets polluted with a huge number of nutrients. You know, industries, agricultural runoff, all of that releases a lot of minerals, right? It releases a lot of chemical nutrients, into the river water. And once the river becomes rich with such minerals, with such nutrients, it causes excessive growth of algae, right? And that is what we see as the green mat, right? So this whole green cover mat that you see is because of that. And it is very dangerous because it does not allow for exchange of oxygen. It kills the local fish, the local aquatic biodiversity of the river gets hampered, the water quality gets degraded, the oxygen in the river water becomes less and less by the day, and therefore eventually the river becomes dead, right? The water cannot support any other life. So therefore, eutrophication is one very, very dangerous effect of water pollution. Okay. The second one is, of course, oxygen depletion. I am sure you know about how that happens. Uh, One of the causes again is eutrophication. But if there are other chemical compounds, some organic carbon which is being added to water, it uses much of the oxygen. And then oxygen is not available for phytoplanktons, for zooplanktons, for small fishes. Okay. And therefore, the aquatic life becomes more and more threatened. Acidification, some chemicals, some nutrients are acidic, plastic, might react with some of the other compounds from industrial waste, and it might increase the acidification of the water. So if acid component is increasing in water, it is again going to have the same deleterious effects that we just discussed with eutrophication and oxygen depletion. Soil contamination. So basically, air, water, soil, all these pollutions are interrelated. Um, they have a connection between them. They have sort of a domino effect between them. Is that water pollution, polluted water, if it is being used in agricultural farms, or if it is being used for other industrial urban projects, and it in itself is contaminated, it in itself is polluted, then it's going to contaminate the soil also. Okay. Or it might contaminate the agricultural land that is present in that area also. Food chain contamination, of course, we just saw about how those pollutants enter into your food chain. And the aesthetic value of water, because if you want to drink water, it must be clear, right? And, we cannot drink water that is polluted, which is let's say brown in color, or which has some odor. So water pollution also decreases the aesthetic value of water, right? So therefore, um, the effects of water pollution, again, of course, there are a lot of diseases also, right? So um, especially biological contamination of water causes waterborne diseases, right? So therefore, uh, it's a big concern. It's water pollution must be controlled, right? And let's now look at some of the control measures for water pollution. Before that, can someone tell me how can you control water pollution? Yes, can anyone tell me how can you prevent water pollution? What are some techniques? What are some day-to-day changes in your lifestyle that you can undertake? You can also write it in the chat box. Yes, anyone? Yes, water treatment plants, correct. So sewage treatment plants, water treatment plants, yes, very correct. Any other methods? Can you think of any other methods that will help to control water pollution? Okay, yes, sewage, someone already mentioned sewage water, correct. Wastewater treatment plants, filtering, correct, very good. Treatment of effluents being released in the water. Yes, so industries must treat their wastewater and then release it into the exteriors. Yes, very correct. So we have the Central Pollution Control Board, right? We also have a Water Pollution Control Board. We have a Water Commission. So under the Water Prevention Control Act, what can be done is that these officials, they have the permission of the law. They can actually go and visit industries. They can supervise industries. They can ask for reports from industries wherein they can actually go and inspect whether industries are letting out contaminated water, right? So we have the provision, we have the safeguarding of even the law, right? So the Water Prevention Control Act. Of course, we will look at this law in our upcoming lecture. Avoid the use of chemical pesticides. Yes, and use organic ones. Okay, very good. Yes, you can always, because agricultural runoff contains your chemical fertilizers. So organic fertilizers are a good alternative to it because they are all biodegradable, they dissolve in water, they do not cause any residual harm. Okay, so look at another few measures. So the natural processes are flooding. Flooding naturally also helps to control pollution. If there is runoff, there is huge amount of forest cover and of course sand filtration. So these mangrove trees, Acha, write it in the chat box. So there are these mangrove trees which actually filter the delta region, right? So they act as a filter. So they also protect the coastline from storm damages, and they also act as a filter. So similarly, also sand acts as a filter. So sand filtration also helps in controlling water pollution. Of course, there are man-made processes. I think someone already had mentioned a sewage treatment plant, water treatment plants, floodplains, flanges. So these are the control measures. Another control measure is using some bioremediation techniques, like for example, using um, plants, algae, fungus. They are put in river water or they are put in contaminated water. And what do? They absorb toxic chemicals from the water, right? Like for example, water hyacinth, it can absorb toxic chemicals like cadmium, right? And it has the ability to grow even in severely polluted waters, and therefore it can improve the quality of water. So your wastewater plants, your municipal water plants also use biological approaches like this. Instead of using a sand filter or a chemical filter, they also use plants like these, right? So because it's natural, it's not going to cause any harm, and it is biologically using that chemical for its own growth. Okay. Then, of course, like someone mentioned, industries must be kept in check. If they are using machines, those machines must be regularly inspected. Those machines must be modified. There should be avoidance of direct discharge. So you must not directly discharge wastewater into the river water bodies. Then there is something called as primary and secondary treatment. So we'll see that in the next slide. Then there is bleaching and disinfection. So what do you use for that? Chlorine is used. Ozone, O3 molecule is used. And in some countries, even UV radiations are used. All of these disinfect water. In our country, we use largely chlorine, right? But even ozone and UV radiations are also, of course, used. All this to disinfect water. And legislation and regulation, I already told you about how the Water Prevention and Control Act, it empowers, it protects water bodies from excessive pollution. Clear? So it prevents water pollution, it controls the existing polluted rivers. Okay, now this primary and secondary, look at it in the next so look at it here. There is a primary process and there's a secondary process. So what happens in the primary process? So this is how your water gets filtered. So this is what happens in your sewage wastewater plants. So there is when raw sewage water from the sewages, it enters into chambers. So the heavier one settles to the bottom, and that is collected, that is disposed in landfills, or it is applied to cropland. Okay, after that, it goes on to the secondary chamber. In the secondary chamber, there is aeration, which means it is mixed with, it is pumped with oxygen. Again, it is allowed to settle. That sludge is also collected along with that of the primary sludge, and both of them are together discharged. So whatever pure water remains, that is treated with a lot of disinfectant agents, and then it finally enters into the river, lake, or ocean. Here, so primary sewage treatment and secondary sewage treatment. Clear? So here there is physical separation, and here there is biological separation because of action of oxygen. Okay, so this is a very, very useful image. It really shows us how your water is treated, right? How wastewater is treated. Because there are these two stages of primary and secondary. In the primary, the physical, it is a physical type of separation. It is a physical type of sewage treatment. And in the secondary, it is a biological type of treatment, because there they are actually using activated sludge, right? So they're actually pumping in oxygen, so that it is going to help in disinfections. Clear? And of course, later it is allowed to be disinfected. Okay. So this is how our surface water and groundwater are treated. So not just not just one type of solution can be applied, but we need to have more and more concerted efforts, right? There is no one approach to it. Okay, we need all types of approaches, right? We need legislations, we need strong laws, we also need industries to be kept in check, right? We need some biological products, we need some, like hyacinth, right? So there is no one way to tackle water pollution, but there has to be a concerted efforts, right? So the role of individuals to prevent water pollution is to treat water with more and more awareness, to of course practice the 4 R's, which is refuse, reduce, reuse, and recycle. That is how we must reduce resource waste. We have to, find substitutes for these toxic pollutants. Because we have many biotechnological advancements, we have a lot of uh, chemical engineers also in process. All of these must be used so that our water remains more and more clean. Okay. uh, so this quickly, it shows you how water treatment plants work. So we will quickly watch that, and then we will look at what are the different ways and means of tackling with marine pollution, right? Because marine pollution is also a part of the whole water prevention and control that we are studying for today. Okay, I'm just sharing the screen.
She is becoming accessed.
So this gives you a better picture, a better idea about how these water treatment plants they work.
Access to fresh water is one of the largest drivers of creating a modern society. But what allows everyone access to seemingly endless supplies of potable water? It depends on where you live, but chances are behind your tap, there's a municipal water treatment plant. There are two main types of water treatment plants: drinking water or wastewater plants. We'll be focusing in on drinking water plants here, but if you'd like to learn about how wastewater is treated, you can watch the video linked in the upper right here. The question still remains, how exactly does one treatment plant take dirty river water, well water, and turn it into water that is safe to drink? It involves a lot of processing using chemicals, filters, and removing all of the toxins and hazards from a given source. The entire process starts with something called coagulation and filtration. All drinking water has to come from somewhere, usually being freshwater lakes, rivers, wells, or streams. In these water sources, there's going to be some amount of sediment as well as organic materials in the water. These particles of sand, bacteria, dirt, wood, etc., they all have to be removed before the water can be sent out to city residents. To do this, chemicals called coagulants are added to the water. These chemicals, such as aluminum sulfate or ferric chloride, work to help the particles in the water congeal together. Essentially, these chemicals have the opposite charges of suspended solids, like clays or silts. When combined, the charges of the particles are neutralized, allowing them to stick together. Coagulants are often added to the water right at the inlet of a drinking water plant, where the water then goes into mixing basins called flocculation basins. In these basins, the solution of water and coagulant will slowly be mixed together to form what are called floc particles. After mixing for a set amount of time determined by water quality in the flocculation basins, the water is moved to sedimentation. It's in these holding tanks where the water sits for the floc particles to begin settling out at a faster and faster rate, which is the intended goal of this process. By simply adding and mixing these chemicals into the water and letting that water sit, a large portion of the sediment will settle out to the bottom as sludge, which can be taken away to a landfill or released. The floc particles are ultimately removed from the bottom of basins, and the clean water, the cleanest at the top due to the settling particles, flows over weirs to the next stage in the process. In some plants, engineers actually use dissolved air flotation tubes in place of sedimentation basins. In these cases, air is pumped into the bottom of the tanks, creating a cascade of tiny bubbles. As these bubbles float to the surface, they take floc particles with them, forming a film of floc on the surface of the tanks. Then a sweeper car pushes the floc into a collection basin where it's taken to a different basin. In dissolved air flotation tubes, the clean water is taken from the bottom, where the least amount of floc is. When it comes to designing wastewater treatment plants, engineers will vary techniques based on the water source and how they want their final water to be eutrophication, the water flows over layers to the next step, filtration. The water at this point will start looking clear, but there will still be bacteria and very small suspended solids in the mix. The filtration process will seek to remove the remainder of the suspended solids and bacteria to further bring the water up the step. Nearly every potable water treatment plant will use a sand filter for this process, even in plants where engineers may not think it's often. Sand filters will be added for extra measures to ensure water. And sand filters are exactly what they sound like, a basin of fine porous sand that filters water. It would be theoretically possible to treat drinking water with old sand filters, but that would result in frequently clogged sand filters, resulting in lower efficiency and more cleaning time. These sand filters can be set up in essentially two different ways. Either the water flows from the bottom and exits the top, or the water flows from the top and exits the bottom. Each layout presents its own set of unique problems, but the most common technique is actually for the water to flow from the bottom to the top. Sand filters aren't highly technical. Water just passes through them and particles stay caught as they run out of space to flow through. However, while not highly technical, sand filters are highly efficient. Water flowing out of sand filters will be averaging around less than 1 fluid and flow measuring or whatever local code is used for water clarity. This measurement is essentially just a way to determine the number of particles still remaining in the water. Many treatment plants will also pass water through active carbon basins, which you can essentially think of as giant water filter things. Activated carbon particles have hundreds of tiny pores on them that help remove the tiniest of sediment and bacteria. This process isn't fully necessary, but it helps improve taste and odor, often reversing residents. At this point, the water should be mostly crystal clear, but there still remains some residual bacteria. That brings us to the next step, disinfection. There are three main ways of disinfection in the water process, which can be used individually or in combination with one another depending on the design. First, chlorine or fluorine treatment. There's ozone treatment, and finally, ultraviolet radiation treatment. In the US, the main method of disinfection is by adding chlorines or chlorine-based compounds. These compounds, such as chlorine dioxide, microorganisms. One downside to this process, though, is that chemicals can react with other organic materials in water to create disinfection byproducts. Disinfection byproducts are harmful to the health and have to be prevented or mitigated. This extraneous reaction with other organic material is also why chlorine disinfection must come at the end of the treatment process. If added at the beginning, an abundance of disinfection byproducts will be created because of uncontrolled issues with mixtures and plant operators. Even with all of this, chlorine is used mainly as a metallic contaminant. It not only kills any pathogens in water and plants, but residual chlorine levels contaminate the tap water, killing any chemicals that might get introduced after leaving the plant. Most cities or states will have maximum or minimum chlorine levels in the drinking water in order to keep residents safe. The other most common method of treatment is ultraviolet radiation. In this process, UV light is shined through the water, which scrambles any bacteria. Today, this doesn't kill the bacteria, but it makes it impossible for them to reproduce, thus making them harmless. The main downside to this disinfection process is that it isn't residual with the chlorine, meaning that any bacteria introduced to the water after this process can't be treated. Finally, we're left with ozone treatment. process involves adding ozone O3 to water, called ozonation. The ozone kills the bacteria in the water as well as forming the taste and odor. In most cases, this treatment process also requires that a chemical ozone at the end, such as sodium bisulfate, as not to cause any harmful effects to the city's population or anyone who might drink the water after the water is treated in a disinfection processes is ready for delivery to the tab. The water fully outflow plant is tested for various levels of chemicals, particles, and other qualities, all combined with the plant's permit. This permit, set by the governing agency, regulates water quality, holds the treatment plant accountable for the treatment process. At this point, all water is fit for human consumption per the permit, and the treatment plant is tasked with clean and flowing rates. The city constant pressures of 40 psi must be kept at the outlets of the water in the system so that in areas of high elevation in the pipe network, water retains residual pressure. 1 foot in water elevation is directly increase or decrease of 0.4 psi. So as water is pumped throughout the city, its pressure at any given different elevation fluctuates. Positive pressure always has to be achieved as to not let any external water in the ground flow through pipe cracks or joints. This would contaminate the entire system and is one way you might experience a water illness. Essentially, that means engineers have placed Deplete and somewhere in that city's pipe network dropped below the required psi, and water or contaminants might have infiltrated the system. Massive pumps at the treatment plant supply pressure to the system through constant operation. Some of this pressure can be stored as elevation in water towers, which can give pumps a backup in emergencies or fire flows. In a lot of cases, water towers allow the pumps at the treatment plant to run at a constant rate, which increases efficiency and removes downtime problems. This combination of pumps and water towers allows your tab to remain flowing and otherwise allows you to live in the comfort of your home. Civil engineers and treatment plant operators work around the clock to provide clean water for water treatment plants. At this point, we've taken a look at the most common water treatment techniques, but there are tens to hundreds of other techniques you have. This draws back to one of the coolest things about water treatment plant design. You're able to use any number of creative solutions to clean the water, and as long as it comes out clean, you've done your job well. Don't forget about the thankless job of being a water treatment plant operator, though. These men and women work around the clock to keep the plants running 24/7, so you can always have fresh water. A lot of time, money, and effort goes into making sure that you can have that nice glass of water on demand.
So here we have seen exactly what happens at water treatment plants. If you are interested to know about what happens to industrial wastewater plant, then you can of course check the link. I will give you the link in the chat box, and you can watch it when you have the time. So this is a case about exactly how water treatment plants work, how they are efficient for us to clean the river water, clean the industrial water, and make it into potable water. Potable water means drinking water. So therefore, there is so much ecosystem that is present around us to tackle pollution that even we should be aware of our duty towards the ecosystem. We should be aware about our role as individuals, right? So we should not. So whenever we are traveling, we should carry water with us instead of buying Bisleri and all of that. We should make sure that we are carrying water from our home. If there is, of course, no other way, then that should be Bisleri, or buying water must be the last resort, because bottled water also is contaminated. It uses plastic. It is stored in plastic. It's not a very healthy alternative. Of course, we must work with nature to treat sewage. We should find substitutes for toxic pollutants. And of course, we should reduce resource wastage. In this current season of summer, we are right in the peak of summer. Our requirements for water pollution cannot be highlighted even more. So this is one summary slide that I have put. So for all the pollutions, you can find such summary slide. It gives you causes, effects, and solutions. So you can read about it. Of course, if you have any questions, you can ask me anytime. So this is about surface and groundwater. Okay, now the last part which is remaining is marine pollution. So ocean pollution or marine pollution is also caused because of the introduction of different harmful or potentially harmful substances into the marine environment. They interfere with the functioning of the marine ecosystem, and therefore they make it unfit for sustaining life, which means that even big animals, big fish that are found in oceans are also becoming threatened. Recently, in the video that we just watched, they showed you that, from a dead shark's stomach, they found big chunks of plastic. So not only are the phytoplanktons at risk, the zooplanktons at risk, but also big sharks, whales, right? So big animals, turtles, all are under threat. Most of the sources for marine pollution are land-based. So marine pollution is majorly caused from land sources. There is runoff of seawater, a runoff into seawater because of rainfall. Sometimes there is direct discharge into the ocean by industries, by, there are oil rigging that goes on in deep inside the ocean for petroleum, for natural gas, so deep sea mining. Then there is something called as ship pollution also. Can you see this? Ships also release wastewater into the oceans. So that is also causes marine pollution. And there is huge amount of ship movements across the ocean trade routes. So a lot of ship pollution acidification. Then can you see here, this is all deep sea mining. So rigging for oil, for petroleum, for natural gas, all of that is causing a lot of marine pollution. What are the effects of marine pollution? So the first one is, of course, eutrophication. Like it can happen on rivers. It can also happen over ocean waters. Plastic debris. Can you see huge amount of plastic which is littered directly enters into the aquatic ecosystem. Acidification. So can you see coral? Coral bleaching. So these corals are supposed to be nice and colorful, but because of marine pollution, they have bleached, right? So they are now dead. The living component is no longer living inside these calcium protection, right? So they are totally bleached. They are totally white in color. Increased toxicity, and of course, noise pollution. So, these oil rigging, deep sea mining, transport by ships, all of that, submarines, all of that causes noise pollution inside the river, inside the oceans, and it also disturbs the aquatic reproductive cycles, right? The other effects are again oxygen depletion, acidification, like I already told you, because of huge amount of industries or rise in greenhouse gases, rise in carbon emissions is causing a lot of acidification. there is choking of marine life. So if there is oil spillage and leakage into the ocean, the birds, the fishes are all getting covered with that oil. Can you see here? And it causes choking of that life, right? Basically, they suffocate. Even birds are getting affected, even fishes are getting affected. So this is a leakage of oil into the ocean. Okay, so what can individuals do on a large scale? On a personal scale, you can use proper use of chemicals and proper dumping of waste. Something that you and I can do on our level are beach cleanups, right? You must have heard of this. There are many NGOs, there are many college students who volunteer for beach cleanups and a lot of campaigning, especially, in Mumbai. There are colleges that actually take field trips for beach cleanups. Even Yamuna, you must have heard of the river Yamuna, which is again heavily polluted. So many colleges around Delhi also take students on beach cleanup trips. Or there are also NGOs that can do it. And a lot of active campaigning, which will help in raising awareness so that all the three types, the surface pollution, river pollution, water pollution, and ground pollution and marine pollution, all of these will be checked, right? So you are college students, you do have a lot of time on your hand after college, after all the lectures. You can always join some NGO, you can always start that initiative. When we were studying in Garware College, we used to go to the river. Because our college is just next to the river, right? So we used to go and have regular river cleanup drives. So every weekend we used to go and clean the river, right? The advantage is that our college is right next to the river. There is no traveling that you have to do, right? So you can also think of such activities so that we do our fair share in preserving our ecosystems. So any questions about lectures today, about the two lectures today? Okay, so I'll share the attendance link. Just fill the attendance and then we can stop.